Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're specifically going to talk about an incredibly shocking statement that Ben from Questing Beast, Ben from Questing Beast is a major OSR champion. He is a major champion for the OSR banner, and he has recently said, he made this shocking statement that the 5e community expects Dungeon Masters to be life coaches. That's incredible, and we have to discuss it. All right, so first of all, I do the best I can with this channel, but like, it's amazing. I say stuff and people are like, "Where's your link? Where's your statement?" You know, like where's your practical research document formed in triplicate? Right? Like, so links below. If you think I'm not saying what he said, check the link, check the video. It's right below. Okay, you can check out his video. So first, I gotta say what I gotta say about Ben of Questing Beast. Ben of Questing Beast is a major OSR champion. I work very hard on my channel, right? And I love my channel, and I'm proud of my channel, right? But let's not get it twisted. Ben from Questing Beast has a better channel than me, and and if we both put up a video in the day, you better watch this first, because he works harder, and he is just a phenomenal Dungeons and Dragons commentator. Okay, now, and actually, he is an OSR champion. But guess what? Every OSR champion in the world talks about Dungeons & Dragons nonstop, right? And the reason why is nothing that happens on the OSR matters, even remotely compared to not D&D, but D&D's literal errata. Like, I love that line because it's just so true. Dungeons & Dragons errata outperforms as far as clicks, views, engagement, than OSR's greatest achievements, right? Like, it's just, the scale of it is staggering. It's just like, how little people care about OSR, right? Except the OSR themselves, and how much people care passionately about Dungeons and Dragons, including the OSR. Nothing happens on D&D without every OSR champion like abandoning every single story in the OSR to immediately discuss the most minute change on Dungeons and Dragons, right? And I guess that, and I think why is that, right? And I'm sorry I'm not staying focused on. I'm so incredibly excited about what OSR from Questing Beast said, and it is incredible to me what he actually said. And so, but I think one of the reasons why the OSR is constantly talking about Dungeons and Dragons is they're a derivative group. Nobody goes in at the macro level, at the 51% level, and frankly, I think at about the 99% level. No one goes to the OSR directly. They all go to Dungeons and Dragons. They all go to the OSR through Dungeons and Dragons. You become a Dungeons and Dragons player, and then you talk to some, OSR are like vegans. Like, they, if you're OSR, you're sure as heck going to hear about it, right? And so they meet some OSR, and they're like, stop liking what everybody likes and the best thing in the industry, and like this super niche thing that's kind of douchey, like, and just, it's so, sorry. It's, and then, somebody from the OSR, like, begs them to come over and look at their sad sack black and white game. And like, and kind of, it's just like, music, right? They're like, oh, you don't want to listen to Taylor Swift anymore. Let me introduce you to punk, it's very agendaed, right? All right, so let's get to the point here. Thanks for your patience. I'm sorry. I often when I get excited, I just want to talk about every single thing connected. And so, yeah, so I'm excited, but all right, here we go. We're gonna get right to the point. All right, so, you'll see it in Questing Beast is phenomenal. I love him, right? He's wrong about a lot of stuff, but by the way, great creators are often wrong. You know why? Because they're skiing on the black diamond slopes of intellectuality, right? And they're careening off of cliffs, right? And they'll fall, and that's the issue. So if you get somebody who's right all the time, you can be right all the time, but you can be boring as dirt, right? Great creators take chances, and so I think Ben is wrong on most of the things he says, but he's a brilliant creator, and I watch every video he makes. He's fantastic. He's really good, okay? But he's definitely, but he said something that is incredible, so let's get into it. So one of the greatest champions of the OSR is saying, right now, the 5e culture is expecting every dungeon master to be a life coach. Boy, are you right, Ben. You are 100% right? At the macro level, at the 51% level, 5e players are expecting Dungeon Masters to be life coaches. Now, what's astounding here, right, is I've been saying this for 3 years, right? And you guys have been dismissing it, right? And why, right? I get it, because I only have 2,000 subs, and I have this incredibly unique view of Dungeons & Dragons that nobody shares, right? So I'm just a guy shouting in a field, right? I get it, right? But guess what? Sometimes the dude standing on a corner with a sandwich board on, yelling out to the cars around him, is right? Like, and that's my point. Is increasingly people are coming and saying the same thing I'm saying. I've been saying to you for 3 years. Dungeons & Dragons, in my humble opinion, is not a game. It is a human improvement engine. And when you sit down with your players, you'd better improve them, right? That's what it's for. It's not for fun. It's not for cutting goblins in half. And now, OSR champion Ben from Questing Beasts is coming and saying, your 5e players are expecting you to be a life coach, which is exactly what I've been saying for 3 years. Exactly what I've been saying for 3 years, right? And now, Ben from Questing Beasts thinks that shouldn't be, but he does think it is the expectation, and he's 100% correct. So how do we get here? How do we arrive in a world where players are expecting Dungeon Masters to be life coaches? Pure, shocking logic. It is absolutely logical that every 5e player, not every, the macro level of the 51% level of 5e players would expect their Dungeon Master to be a life coach, right? First of all, look at what it is. If you're a Dungeon Master, you got 4 people, you got a person showing that. Let's just take each player. What's happening? Well, you come to the person's home, right? You come to the Dungeon Master's home, right? We're talking generally, right? Just follow me through here. And, you come to the person's home, right? And for 4 hours, they ask questions of you, and you give answers, and there's a back and forth. What's that like? Exactly the same way a psychologist works, right? Many psychologists, actually a significant number of psychologists actually work right out of their home. And there's a great show on television about psychologists who has, people come to his home, and he has like a little office at the back of his house. It's not uncommon at all. Like the barbers and psychologists, some of them work out of their home, right? So you come and they ask a question and you give an answer, and there's a back and forth, and you talk and actually the only reason you don't do it for 4 hours with a psychologist is it would cost you $800, right? But your Dungeon Master is listening to you and is responsively engaging with you. Exactly. Oh, and writing down everything you say and taking notes and reacting to you, right? The role of Dungeon Master, don't even get into like just the physical structure of it looks exactly like the structure of a psychologist and their patient, right? Meet once a week. It's for a specific number of hours. The psychologist takes notes. The Dungeon Master takes notes. There's questions. There's answers. There's discourse. It's literally the same, right? And I'm not even discussing in this whether it should be, right? Or whether it should. I'm saying it is. It is. It just looks. The reason people are expecting Dungeon Masters to be life coaches is it is literally the same structure that a psychologist meets with a patient, right? It's weekly. It's, there's pens and paper. There's seats. Both people are seated. It literally looks the same. So the confusion is incredibly logical. It's an incredibly logical confusion, right? And it's actually not even a confusion. Well, here's the thing. Here's my take. Oh man, I'm so excited about this because I'm excited. For a long time I was a guy shouting in a field, and now people are coming and saying the same thing as me, just from different angles, right? And so I've been telling you, you have to improve your players, right? Ben from Questing Beast is literally saying, hey, if you're a 5e player, there's an expectation that you are literally a life coach, right? And he's 100% correct. That is the expectation that has manifested that has absolutely manifested, right? Now, why is this? There's so many reasons. It's completely logical to expect your Dungeon Master to be a life coach, right? Here's the other one, okay? First of all, Dungeon Master, Master. You have mastered the dungeon. Oh, and look back to Dragon Magazine. You know what it said on the cover of every Dragon Magazine? It said mastering the dungeon and beyond. And Gary Gygax picked those words to be there. He chose it, right? He chose those words. He said, yes, every month when we send out Dragon Magazine, I want you to tell every dungeon master on this planet, you master the dungeon, and then you master beyond. You master beyond. You master life. And guess what? Right? I know the OSR is like, well, dungeon mastering is really not, we can suck as humans and be dungeon masters. But people don't expect that. They're like, hey, I see what you're doing. You have sat in the seat and said, 1,000 hearts are mine. I feel what 1,000 people feel. I have their memories. I have their emotions. I am manifold sentient. There are 1,000 people in me. Tonight you will meet 37 of them. I will switch from being a prosperous inn owner to a villain, to a bar servant, to a kender, to a dragonborn, and I will cycle through sentience in front of you. I will build this world and you will watch, and then you will help. I will guide you. I have mastered the dungeon, and I have mastered life. It is no mystery why 5e. They see dungeon masters effortlessly building worlds in front of them, taking on different, sentiences, different memory sets, different emotions, different cadences, different speech, different everything, and just switching and switching and switching and switching and switching, right? And in order to sit in that table, they have studied botany and history, and there are literally 12 different disciplines, and I have a video for every single one of them, right? Where they're like, where you stopped studying, I went forward and I learned about politics, and I learned about culture, and I learned about language, and I learned about weapons, and I learned about warfare, and I learned about and I learned about interaction, and I learned about finance, and where you stopped, I kept going, and I learned, and I never stop learning, because there are 1,000 worlds in me, and I have mastered the dungeon, and I am mastering life. And you don't understand it, player, but the reason you respect me, and the reason you understand and increasingly expect me to teach you how to live, is because people forget this all the time, and I've been saying it for 3 years, and now Ben from Questing Beast is coming in, rubber stamping every word I said, in my humble opinion, right? Validating, yes, 5e, they want a life coach from their dungeon master. And the reason why is dungeon mastering is public speech. We forget this constantly, right? Most people are terrified of public speech, terrified of it, right? They'd rather harm themselves often, right, than go into public speech, right? They hate it. It's worse than the dentist for most people. Dungeon masters have mastered public speech, and they've mastered the vast majority of their lives. And the reality is you are going to find very few dungeon masters who struggle at the fundamental level with life. They have mastered the dungeon, and just like Gary demanded, they have mastered beyond. And so when players sit at the table, they are saying, yes, teach me, right, to live. Not just this, we understand this as a simulation. We are going to cut a goblin in half, but the reality is that's only one part of this experience, and this experience is sitting with a person who's going to give me 100% attention and is going to craft a story with me, and this person knows more than I do, right? And that's the difference. Players sit and absorb, and they have some input, but generally players are almost never more knowledgeable, nor successful, more advanced than the people who are dungeon mastering. Because in order to sit in that chair, you must say to yourself, I am a master. I have mastered at minimum the dungeon, and I have mastered significant portions of life. I am a master. And that is the key aspect. It really is the key aspect, where you get to the point where, and we've arrived. Ben from Questing Beast is completely correct. Completely correct. The 5e culture expects their dungeon master to be a life coach, right? And the last thing I'll drop on this is Matthew Mercer, of course, is part of it. Matthew Mercer has been a life coach. He has literally gotten massively involved in the lives of his players and has improved the life of every single person who has sat at his table, with the very odd exception of Orion Akaba, who he destroyed as a human being, right? Because he had mastered him, right? He's like, I'm just going to burn you for fuel, Orion. Everybody else, I'm going to improve you, right? And guess what? Anytime he chooses, Matthew Mercer can restore him, can restore Orion Akaba. It's incredible. It's incredible. Thank you, Ben from Questing Beast, for presenting evidence for what I've been saying for a long time and validating it to a large extent. I know you're not 100% signing off on everything I've ever said, but in my humble opinion, you are absolutely validating the kernel of it, in my humble opinion. All that is my humble opinion, and I am very eager to hear your humble opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.